Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Way We See It. Today, I'm chatting to the gorgeous Michelle Ashby. We connected on Instagram, as you do. Where else do you meet people nowadays? It's Instagram or LinkedIn. That's pretty much all you've got. And I just really resonated with everything that her page was about. So rather than me introduce you, I would love for you to share a little bit about your background, Michelle, and how you got into what you're doing now.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the chance to be on your podcast. So my name is Michelle. I am a personal trainer and I am a life coach. I also own a health and wellness recruitment business called Well-To-Do Search. So how did I get here? Well, from my corporate background, which was predominantly in the fashion industry, I started to notice quite a big disconnect. So I've always personally been into health and fitness myself, and being in the fashion industry, I really started to notice how many women out there were putting all their makeup on, getting glammed up, portraying this beautiful outside what I don't want to say world, but portraying just beauty on the outside, yet on the inside, so many of them were broken as such, had low self-worth, low self-esteem. And at the time, I was a HR director for a particular company that we worked with in the fashion sector. So I had lots of the women working there asking, can you get me some support? I'm really struggling with my anxiety, etc., etc. And I think one of the things that really, for me at that point, was I thought, gosh, if you just spoke to the person next to you, or if I could just say, so-and-so, speak to so-and-so, you're both in the same situation and really struggling with the same issues, maybe it would help. Obviously I couldn't, because I couldn't break confidentiality. And the other thing I really noticed is, and I'm sure so many people listening will resonate with this, is that diet culture, particularly in offices, there is so much chat. On a Monday, what's everybody going to be doing for the week? What's the latest diet they're on? By Thursday, they're probably all trying to encourage each other to have a little piece of cake or some chocolates and Friday night drinks. And then so that cycle started again. And I really started to realize that you could do all of these things externally. You could have the best personal trainer, the best exercise program. But if you couldn't work on what was going on inside your mind, the changes that would take place would always be temporary. So for me, my business now is about fusing together the mental well-being and the way in which you think of yourself and treat yourself is linked to the physical. So really, for me, when I work with people, I'm really working on their mindset, but they generally come to me for physical support. So I almost scratch that itch with the fitness. But the biggest change is what's going on inside.
So true, because one of the things that, particularly my team will know me for saying is you can never make a long-lasting physical transformation without an emotional one. And I really believe that is the fundamental. When I started my coaching practice, obviously I no longer kind of do the fitness coaching side of things, but when I started my fitness coaching practice, that was exactly it. I used to be like, yep, we do meal plans, we do training plans, we'll get you stage ready. That was kind of my niche. And then I would kind of sneak in the mindset of like, oh, you've got this monthly module that you need to do as part of your homework. And, I would sneak this in, but the girls would always say after month 6, the ones that didn't quit, right? After month 6 were like, this has changed my life. Not because they learned more about macros, not because they learned how to meal portion, or not because they learned a new exercise in the gym, but because they actually allowed themselves to listen to the personal development books, to bring awareness to what they were saying, what they were thinking. And you're so right that unless we do that, and I think this applies to all areas of life, not even our body, right? Unless we do the work on the inside, the outside is never really going to change in the long term. So talk to us a little bit about kind of, the type of clients that you work with, and I guess some of the things that you help them overcome. Because I know it's kind of obvious, people could assume that you just do weight loss journey, but I'm sure it's never quite as simple as that. So I'd love to know a little bit about kind of how you infuse the two together, obviously without all the details, but kind of what a client kind of experiences when they work with you.
Yeah, so typically a client will come across me when they're at that point that they feel that they've been on the hamster wheel enough. They have been round and round and round trying to find a solution, trying to find an answer. So they've probably tried every single diet that you can imagine. They're sick of starting on a Monday, failing by a Friday. Maybe sometimes they last longer. They've probably read lots of personal development books. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but I was the person that used to buy so many personal development books. And I honestly thought, this is going to have the answer. This book will not save me, but this book will definitely solve my problems. And it never did. I always learned something, but it never was the fix that I was looking for. So that's at the point that they will generally find me. I will work with them, coaching them twice a month. So bi-weekly, I always coach my clients. And then they will work with me on a personal training level. So we always work out how many sessions they want a week. Maybe that's one, maybe it depends how self-motivated they are to do their own workouts. And then we talk to them a bit, or I talk to them a bit, should I say, more about food, nutrition. My biggest thing is about balance. It is about delayed gratification. It is, please do not come to me if you want a quick fix. And I actually have turned clients away that have come to me and said, hey, I'm getting married in 8 weeks. Kind of like, you need to go to somebody else because that's not what I'm about. And hey, that's great if you do want to lose a few pounds for your wedding, but I'm kind of there for the lifestyle changes. And it's about accepting that true lasting change. First and foremost, you have to accept where you are right now. And I think so many people don't accept where they are because they're always in the future. They're always thinking, okay, well, when I lose a stone or when I lose this weight, I'll be happy then, I'll fit in that dress. Maybe then I'll go for a promotion. Then maybe I'll be ready to change careers or go on a date or whatever. But actually the transformation can't stop until you can say, who am I now? What am I now? And just make some kind of peace with that. And then once you've made peace with that, it becomes easier to take the smaller steps. So it's really that's a whole mindset shift in itself, to kind of look at who you are and say, I accept me. So I do a lot of work around values. I do a lot of work around emotional needs. I do a lot of work around habits, around triggers. But really, I think if you want to put a whole kind of label on that, it's kind of like a journey of self-discovery, right? I think we're so conditioned by society and marketing ploys and social media these days of like who we should be, what we should be doing, what success looks like, what beauty looks like, that we don't actually know who we are anymore, because you kind of cherry picked a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that from everybody else. And then suddenly one day you kind of like, is this really the job I want to do? Is this really the way that I would dress if I'd have thought about it myself? All of those different things. And I'll be really honest, there's certain elements of my life that I look at it now and I think, did I buy that just because I think that I should have bought that? Even down to my car, just, little bits like that. And you think, did I really want that? Or did I buy that because I thought that would make me look good or I'd fit in? And I actually did a talk about this a while ago about fitting in. And actually, when you break it down, what does that even mean? I mean, like it's nonsense, because who are we trying to fit in with? Because
it's crazy. And it's so true. And everything you said, like, my coaching program I know is different, but of course there's always going to be similarities, right? So my next level life program, again, one of the biggest things we talk about is values, emotional needs, like, a lot of the core stuff, right? But I think the biggest thing that you just said there that totally resonated with is about what I call borrowed goals. So people borrow their goals or their aspirations from the people around them, and they're not actually sure what it is that their goals are. So one of the biggest things I've seen with clients who, they don't necessarily come to me for the weight loss side of it, but obviously it becomes one of the goals or objectives they have in their, life plan, is to lose a stone or whatever it might be. And one of the questions I always ask them is, yeah, but do you really want to lose weight? And they look at me like I'm backwards. They're like, of course I will do. I'm a stone overweight, or I'm a size 14, want to be a size 12, whatever it is. I'm like, yeah, but do you actually? Or do you just think that you should? And it's the same. I see this a lot with my network marketing business, right? People will sit on coaching calls with me and tell me that they're going to promote. They're going to go to the next level. I'm like, but do you really want to? They're like, of course I do. Why would I not want to? I'm like, do you really want to? Or do you think it's what you should do? And I know that in my life, there have
Mm.
been many times where I have done something, taken action, pursued something because I felt that it was the right thing to do, the should to do, or the what somebody else would do, rather than the deep intuition sense of what was right for me. And we were briefly chatting before we came on air all about kind of making intuitive decisions in business. It's actually going to be something that I think I'm going to talk a lot more about. It keeps coming up. It's come up on a few chats. I feel like this is a theme of the week for my Instagram, all about kind of intuitive business, and you know how whenever we take a slight turn to the left, a client will land that brings us right back on the right. And I just think being able to have that instinctive decision, I think a lot of people have moved away from that. And I do think the media, the overconsumption of social media, you know, has sent us on paths that aren't really our own. So I loved that you mentioned that, because I think it's so true. And I think when we can help people realize that it is what they want, they will find this deep sense of fire and desire to go get it. But the reason that's often lacking is because it's a should goal or a borrowed goal from your best mate Sally, other than actually being your true north or your true goal. So I love that you brought that up. Now, we talked a little bit before we came on, a little bit about kind of the universe, and kind of I had something happen to me today that was just one of those things that you just is unexplainable other than the universe. So I would love for you to share, it comes up a little bit about, I guess, your journey with the law of attraction. Now I'm throwing this on you, but I know that everybody has a story. Everybody.
I have. So I've actually got gratitude tattooed on my wrist. So the law of attraction, I'd never really heard of it until 2010, which obviously seems like a lifetime ago now. And I've been through a really rubbish personal time. I was previously married, very, very toxic relationship. So was going through a divorce. At the same time, I had already handed in my notice to my job. Everybody said to me, don't leave your job, stay in your job, and basically come home to where I was from originally, which was Leicester, but I'd already got this job in London. But everybody kept saying, you don't know anyone in London, you know, you're going through a divorce. And I don't know why. I call it intuition. I just knew I had to go. I was just kind of like, I've just got to go. And it got really, really tough in that first 6-9 months, because obviously there was a lot of newness, and also there was a lot of healing going on at the same time. And I remember, so she's my best friend now, she gave me the book The Secret, and that was my first and I remember reading it thinking, this is so American, but I got it. The actual philosophy of it, I kind of got it. So I thought I'd just start to weave it in. I got into journaling. Oh my God, I had so many journals. That was, you know, in fact, I've thrown them all away now. And I remember when my now husband, I met him sort of 3 years later, and he stayed in my apartment. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I've got all these journals with this crazy stuff in. You don't find them. But I really started to see the benefits of, for me now, it's more, my journey with the universe, I guess, has got bigger. I do believe genuinely in fate, and I believe, you know, and here's a saying you asked me earlier, like about quotes. I do genuinely believe what's meant for you will not pass you by. It might take you slightly longer to realize that it's there, and you might go on a very strange path to find it, but I always think that you will get there. And I think you have to open your eyes. So sometimes I think we walk around a bit blinkered, and probably with, you know, old Sally's goal rather than your own. And I think until you can really open your eyes, the universe is always talking to you. The universe is always there, but you just don't always realize it. It's like, for example, if you're in a situation, or perhaps you're overdoing it at work or at the gym, let's say, for example, your body will try to tell you. First of all, it will whisper to you, but you might ignore it. It'll be a twinge here or a sleepless night there. And then the more you ignore it, the louder it gets. And so it's about tuning into that intuition, which I think, for me, that's connected to the universe. I don't think you can just chuck things out there and just sit back and kind of think, I'll wait for it to come back. but I do believe the more good that you put out in the world, the more good that will come back to you. But I also think you've got to have your eyes open to what is there. And if you're walking around blinkered, you'll miss the opportunities.
That is so true. And it came up on another podcast. The podcast hasn't gone live yet. It goes live on Tuesday with Katie Miller, who I did a podcast last week with, and me and her have been on a very similar journey. And again, my first book was The Secret. Always the story given to you by someone influential. And hers is the exact same thing. And I think, as like to your point, as much of it is a little bit like what woo-woo American stuff at the beginning, which we're just not used to as square British people. But once you get past that, the message is there, which is just remembering that you don't sit on your hands. It's not, the law of attraction isn't a sit down and do nothing, but it is when you act out of that intuition, act from that inspiration, you trust that gut, you will be, the things that you want will come to you. And I've been on many detours. I think that's probably a good word. Gabby Bernstein calls them detours in the right direction, because they will always bring you back. You will always bounce back to where you were meant to be. You just might end up off kilter for a few years. And I just think once people really get it, and by get it, I don't mean like the quotes on Vibe Source, right? I mean, really get it. This is how these people can be happy all the time, or more positive most of the time, because we get it.
Yeah, and I think, I do think there's almost like this positive toxicity out there now. I think there's far too much of it almost, I want to say almost like rammed down your throat through social media. And there's so many variations of The Secret, and there's so many authors now that have written their spin on it, which is great. But we also have to remember we are human beings with emotions. Like, we can't be positive all the time. And I think there's a difference between genuinely being happy and at peace with yourself and authentic in your behaviors and what you put out to the world and how you listen to your intuition and therefore act on it, then there's a big difference to then being, oh yeah, I'm always positive, I'm always happy, because nobody is always happy, but you can choose how you respond to a situation, right? So you could be in a, God forbid, especially with everything that's happened in the world now, there's so many people that have experienced real heartbreak, loss, job losses, whatever, but you always can choose your response to that situation. I had a friend not so long ago that, she was feeling really down. She is on the front line. She's got lots of personal stuff going on, and she kind of gave me 3 scenarios that could have happened in a certain situation. And I said, well, I can't tell you what the outcome can be. All I can ask you is, do you know that you have the capacity, the emotional capacity and strength to deal with whatever that outcome is, and you will find some form of happiness in whatever those 3 outcomes are? And she was kind of like, well, yeah. And I said, well, there you go. That's all you can do. And I think for me, yes, there's positivity, and I would describe myself as a positive person, but we all have ups and downs in life. But I think that's where you try and find that kind of middle ground. And that's something that I massively talk to clients about, and you'll resonate with this, is it's the all or nothing. It's the swinging pendulum. You're either on a diet or you're not on a diet. You're either happy or you're sad. And I think as you get more, I guess I want to say older, but it's not, because at any point in life you can mature, right? And I think as you become more self-aware and you go on that journey, I think you can just find more balance and more of an equilibrium in life.
Equilibrium is my favorite word. I think the word balance, I think the word balance is like, it's been overused.
Yeah.
This mythical place. And I think it's a mythical place, right? Because you're never going to be in balance. Like, I'm never going to work the same amount of time that I play, right? It's never going to be like that. I'm either going to be, working way more, but to me, that fills me up. So therefore, I'm not going to be in balance with how much time I have, but I'm going to find that equilibrium in everything that I do. And I just love that word. I think it's just amazing. But yeah, you're so right. And I used to be such a black and white person. I was so all or nothing. I was like, I'm either in work mode or I'm in party mode. I was actually that girl. I was like, right, I'm in Ibiza now. That's it. I'm getting wrecked. Or I was, in love with someone, or I was breaking up with someone. There was no like sense of anything just being, it was all very like on, off, on, off. And so I had to learn to live in the shades of grey. I had to learn to live in the middle ground. And you know what? I think that's what this last year has been for me. I'm definitely an adrenaline junkie. It's kind of, I've ingrained that sense of not quick wins, right? I'm actually quite good at delayed gratification, but almost that sense of chasing a goal that for me, like, lights me up. I'm a driver, like I'm an A-type personality. That's like my go-to. And I think the last year has taught me to live more in the shades of gray and the in-between. And that's been a huge lesson, even for me at this point in my journey, to realize that actually I was chasing highs. I was still doing it, even though it might not have seemed like that on the outside, because they were all successes and wins. And why would you not chase these things? I was doing it out of almost a compulsion, because that's how I get my kicks, right? And actually I've learned to live in that middle ground.
Yeah, I completely resonate. And I'm a red, I'm an A-type, you know, I'm so driven. And I think for me, you know, having my daughter slowed me down a little bit, but also, you know, I'm from a really heavily sales driven background, you know, and I always remember my CEO at the time, he was kind of like, you're only as good as your last deal. So of course you don't really celebrate. You kind of go, woo, yep, okay, on to the next. And I do thrive on that. I massively thrive on that. But the same as you, this last year has not necessarily taught me to press pause, but it's taught me to slow down. It's taught me to slow down and enjoy the journey a little bit more, and not to rush to get to the end goal. And because, to be honest, I used to get to the end goal and go, oh, right, great. Oh, well, it's not quite as great here as I thought it would be. So where to next? Because you built it up in your head, right? And so that's why I think it is about enjoying the journey and slowing down, because when you slow down, you can actually see more and add value. And, you know, my to-do lists were huge, but I loved it. But I think because, you know, I'm homeschooling as well, I've had to go, what are the top 4 things that I have to do today? And how can I almost compartmentalize my day when I need to? I mean, I'm wondering what I'll do with 8 hours when she goes back to school and after school club. I'm sure I'll fill it, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident you will find something to do, because I know what we like. You touched on something there which was really interesting around compartmentalizing, and I think sometimes that's seen as a bad thing, as in when we put things in boxes and we're like, you know, like we're not dealing. But one of the lessons that I really had to learn in business and in my personal life over the last 2 years is boundaries, and finding the boundary line between, because obviously my business is a lifestyle businesses. So the challenge that comes with that is, you know, I don't sit at a laptop, type all day and on corporate Zoom calls, you know, I'm on my phone, I'm chatting to people on Instagram, like it's very social business. And so I've found that boundary line difficult to find when it's my time to switch off or zone out. And I think with not being able to go out as well, having time out is like, oh, let's get a takeaway and watch Netflix again, right? But I guess for you, as someone that, you know, you've got all these extra roles as well, you know, you've got parent in there, obviously you're doing a few different things in terms of, you know, your personal training and the life coaching element. How have you kind of found that boundary line, or what are some of the things that you maybe do to help support your own boundaries in that business/personal space?
For me, boundaries came down to what was important to me. I did used to be a yes person. I was a people pleaser. I never saw it as people pleasing though, because I think I'm a bit like yourself, you know. So I've got my own HR and recruitment business. I've got 2 business partners, and then I've got my coaching business. So essentially, I can work when I want and do what I want. I don't have, as you say, a sort of corporate hours. That for me is brilliant, you know, because it means that, you know, if I do need to do something with my daughter, like homeschooling, I can just do what I want when I want. But as you say, that the lines blur, and that, you know, there's no, oh, it's 5:30, let's all switch off. Oh, it's Friday, let's switch off. But that works for me, because I would prefer to do a bit every day, and have some time off every day. But equally, there was a time in my life, and I'm getting better at it now, that as soon as someone messaged, I'd want to reply. And even if I was in the middle of like a project, so I think that's why for me recruitment was very good, right? Because it was chat to people, reply to emails, chat to people, reply to emails, where a lot of more of what I do now is write content, create content. That actually requires you to kind of go quiet all of that noise, get creative. And that's quite hard with a child at home, with your emails going off. And actually for me, I realized it was about self-worth. It was about what was important, and what was important to move me forward to my goals. Because every time I stopped what I was doing to suddenly reply to somebody else, I was helping them out. I wasn't helping myself. And that's where I suddenly felt, there's my boundary. Does it matter if I reply in half an hour or in 24 hours? And actually there was a part of that that actually was self-preservation, because you're too easily accessible. You look like, oh, it's all right, give it to Michelle, she'll do it. Oh, just ask Michelle. I noticed people would ask me questions that I think, can you look in your own emails for that? You know, I'm not, and I used to say this, it's funny because I used to say this to my team years ago, you know, when I used to run, we were an international team, and people would say to me, Michelle, what time is it in LA? Michelle, what time is it in Paris? And I'd kind of say, I'm not the talking clock, guys. We have Google for that or whatever. But again, that's your boundary, isn't it? You're having to constantly push back and say, this is what I'm here for, this is what I'm not here for. But I think part of that is, it's almost educating the people around you. And I don't mean sitting down and giving them a lesson, but it's, you know, for example, with your coaching clients, it's about, the reason they come to you for coaching is because they need to learn for themselves. The idea of a coach is they don't need you forever. You help them to get to a place that they've got all the tools that they need to go beyond and to live their life. So by me answering their questions all the time, I just become their, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, I just become their crutch, you know, and that's not going to help them. So that's really helped me with my boundaries. That, you know, when you've got a 6-year-old roaming around the house that says, Mummy, you've been on the phone for hours, you know,
different. Hey,
that, yeah, it's different. It's different.
Totally.
And also, you know, when she just walks in and says, Mummy, I need to go for a poo, you kind of just have to go, okay, we're going now.
Bye-bye. Yeah, no,
Bye-bye.
I totally get it. And you're so right. You know, one of the things I always used to say to my coaching clients was like, when you're ready, you'll know when it's time to leave, because you'll no longer need me. And I could tell that when a client was ready to leave. And, you know, I've never wanted to be somebody in someone's life forever, you know, and one of the reasons I did decide to shut down my business last year was because I had quite a lot of clients that had been with me for 3 years. And I was like, it's too long. Like, I know that you've goals move, right? With competitions, obviously you take time off, you get back on it. So it wasn't necessarily that they hadn't achieved their goal and they were still trying. It was more that the goalpost kept moving. But I just said to them, you know what? This relationship isn't what it used to be. And now what's happening is you're relying on me for that emotional validation and support. And that was a really eye-opening moment for me when I recognized letting all that go. And I felt light when I decided to close my business and send that email to all my clients. I felt light, whereas a year before I'd thought about it and it made me feel heavy. And coming back to that point we were talking earlier about intuition, therefore I knew then it was the right time to evolve into whatever I was going to do next. And you know, I just think that there is a journey in your business, there's a journey in your life that is continually unfolding. And yet when we borrow all these goals and we bury our heads in what we think we should be doing, I just think you're missing out on your own journey, and it saddens me to death. It really does. So, I mean, we've been talking a while. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours. So I'm going to ask you 2 of my standard questions to close this out. So the first one is, are there any books that you have read or listened to, you know, in fact, audibles, that have made a real significant change or impact on you?
One of them is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, because I think that applies to so many areas of life. And I do really believe that one of the things that holds all of us back from going on our own path, whatever that looks like, and going after what truly you want, is fear. And that fear can be fear of failure, but often I think that comes down to fear of judgment, and wondering what other people will think. So some of the biggest changes that I've made in my life, you know, when I had, and we touched on it earlier, when I moved to London, everybody thought I was crazy. Nobody agreed with me. They supported me because they loved me, but I was going against the grain. And it wasn't until a few years later when, you know, I think things kind of worked out. Everyone sort of went, "Oh, she's okay." That's all right then. So the support was there, but the belief in what I was doing wasn't there. And that was quite a big thing for me to do, to kind of go, I've got to do this, whether it's right or wrong. And so I think that's a huge part, is being able to be open to that judgment, accept it and move on, and not let it change your direction. And that applies to anything, right? I mean, it could be as simple as what top you walk out in today. You know, what will people think about it? Who cares? You know, if you love it and that's your personality, do it. If that's, you know, and I'm sure you've come across it in network marketing, because I know there's so much stigma about your industry. I'm actually quite a big fan of it because I think it's a great business model. You know?
Well, there's stigma. I'm like, guys, if you were actually in it, you'd all be like, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And I'm like, I just roll my eyes now. I'm like, I do not have the energy or time to educate you, my friend. I've got better things to be doing.
And the personal development you get in your companies is amazing. So that's one of my big ones. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Another more recent one that I read is Fern Cotton's Speak Your Truth. Okay. And that's all about being authentic and finding your voice. And I think that's exactly what we talk about. You just talked about, borrowed goals. You know, it's actually going, is that me? Or is that somebody else talking right there? And so that's about bringing yourself home. And she's really honest. If you've read any of Fern Cotton's books, you know, she talks about the monkey mind, but she doesn't talk about the monkey mind in that way. She talks about the monkey mind as in, you know, walking into a party and think you automatically think, well, everyone's going to hate me in here, everyone's going to think I'm an idiot. And it's about being able to overcome some of those things and just actually say, what do I believe in this situation? What are my values here? You know, and being able to stay true to them.
Yeah, totally. Okay, and my final question is, are there any quotes or mantras that you live by, or people would say, oh yeah, Michelle would say that?
I don't necessarily live by any. I am someone that loves a good quote, and if I see one, it will resonate with me at that time. One of the big ones that I have is trust the timing of your life. It's something I've got pinned up here, and I firmly believe that, because sometimes we think we should be further ahead, we should have more, we should have done more, but again, that goes back to the shoulds, and actually I think you should just trust the timing. And the other one is, you are what you settle for.
Oh, mic drop.
There you go.
Oh my God, I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. So where can people find you? Like, what's your Instagram or your social media handles so that people know where to go find you after this?
So you can find me at Mich Ashby, which is MICH, and then my surname Ashby, on Instagram. On there, if you go there, you'll find everything. My website's super easy. It's www.michelleashby.co.uk. They're the main two places that you can find me.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and that was The Way That We See It.